Don't vote Democrat, don't vote Democrat, don't vote Democrat. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Look around at what's taking place in the country, and pretty much everything that's going wrong can be tied to Democrat agenda, Democrat policy, Democrat push. I mean, we all know Joe Biden is a puppet who has zero leadership credibility, not just in America, but around the world. Just look at Secretary Lloyd Austin's failure to call in sick. Just, took off, hung out in the hospital for a few days, didn't call in. If you or I did that, right, we'd be fired. But in this administration, they didn't even notice he was gone, right? They sent in some lady. Here, go fill in my seat at the National Security Council. What's your name? All right, Mary? Yeah, go ahead. No, I don't need your last name. I don't know what your clearance is, but it doesn't matter because in this administration, Joe Biden pushes national security policy based on what he's told to do. So don't vote Democrat, please. Do us all a favor. If you're planning on voting Democrat, go watch Netflix. I'm sure there's something better on. Before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at washingtontimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my Bold and Blunt newsletter. Just go to the bottom of the washingtontimes.com page, find the newsletter section, click on it, and you'll be treated to an entire webpage of all these newsletter offerings that the Washington Times puts out. And they're all great products. My colleagues at the Washington Times all do very excellent work. But this is Bold and Blunt, so I'm promoting Bold and Blunt. So find Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, click on it, and please sign up for my 3 times a week newsletter. It comes out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Contains my commentaries with bullet points, talking points, information and data that you need, and facts, right, to fight these Democrats and send them back into their basements, waiting for their mommies to give them their breakfast biscuits and so forth, and hopefully staying away from the polls. But it also contains my twice weekly Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunt podcast. And guess what? You can get Bold and Blunt anywhere podcasts are offered. Just do a Google search on it. The McCourtney Institute for Democracy did this study. It kind of bothers me that it is not dated, right? Even in the URL, there's no date, but it's fairly recent because they're talking about recent elections and Donald Trump and so forth. So it's been conducted in the last few years. And the title of this study is Americans Not Only Divided, but Baffled by What Motivates Their Opponents. And I find that interesting because when I try and put myself in a Democrat voter's shoes and get into their mind and think, what is it about this voter that he or she thinks it's okay that boys can dress up as little girls and pretend to be girls and go into dressing rooms with real girls and undress, and that's sane? I draw a blank. So as a Christian, the only thing I can come up with, which is probably the truth, is that it's evil being played out in America. And when I look at the Democrat Party, I see a party that is filled with an agenda-driven evil force at the top who simply want to crumble and cripple America from within and usher in a big globalist takeover of America where God will be replaced by government. And in the middle and at the bottom, filling out the triangle there, filling out the tier, a bunch of lunatics who have been brainwashed by the lords in their party into thinking that America is to blame for all that ails the world, that capitalism and the free market is not freeing, but rather enslaving, that it is racist, that the founding fathers, because some of them owned slaves, just as many blacks did and do to this day, are nonetheless different from blacks who own slaves, and they're racist, whereas we dismiss the idea that actually blacks owned black slaves too. We just ignore that. But founding fathers are the ones who are racist, and therefore all the documents that they put forth that guarantee individuals' liberties that come from above, from a creator, are racist by logical extension and must be abolished and replaced by something that is much more freeing, like communism, right? This is the mindset of Democrats. This is the mindset of leftists. And I have to say, I agree with this McCourtney Institute for Democracy. Republicans can't understand Democrats. It's very difficult, if you're sane, to understand insanity. You keep thinking, well, if they just open a history book, or if they just read the Constitution, or if they crack open the cover of a Bible, then maybe one day they'll get there. They'll reach some sort of sane way of thinking, but it just doesn't happen. So only 1 in 4 Republican voters, I'm reading from this Penn State College of the Liberal Arts McCourtney Institute for Democracy study, which is undated, annoyingly so, but undated. Only 1 in 4 Republican voters felt that most or almost all Democratic voters sincerely believed they were voting in the best interests of the country. I share that. I don't think Democrat voters care about the country. I think Democrat voters look at voting as a way of getting for self, right? They look at the candidates who can give them the most freebies, that can open the doors for a furtherance of their own personal insanity, right? Like the political candidate who guarantees that bathroom doors will be open to all sexes, not just 2, but the 19 that the Democrat Party puts out as being truthful these days. And the Democrat voter looks at the candidate who will guarantee that college will be free. And if you incurred $150,000 in college loans, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and simply just wasted your time in college studying things that make no sense and that land you jobs in bartending, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and that you have no hope of paying back because you really don't want to pay them back, right? You'd rather have someone else pay them back. The Democrat voter looks for the party candidate, the political candidate who will pay back those loans for them, because after all, they're entitled. So yeah, most Republican voters don't think Democrat voters really vote for candidates who are in office or seeking office for the best interests of the country. Rather, reading from this study again, many Republicans told us that Democrat voters were, quote, brainwashed by the propaganda of the mainstream media, end quote, or voting solely in their self-interest to preserve undeserved welfare and food stamp benefits. That's exactly what I was just saying. So, let's see what Democrats say about Republicans. Democrats return the favor, this study says. Republicans uninformed or self-interested. The 429 Democratic voters in our sample returned the favor and returned the favor of criticism, I guess, against the other party, and raised many of the same themes against Republicans. Democrats inferred that Republicans must be, quote, very ill-informed, and they put very in all caps, not just ill-informed or very ill-informed, but very, very ill-informed, or that, here we go, blame Fox News, quote, Fox News told me to vote for Republicans, end quote, or that Republicans are, quote, uneducated and misguided people guided by what the media is feeding them, end quote. So in other words, Democrats think Republicans are just too stupid. Otherwise, they would vote Democrat. Look, I was born and raised in Massachusetts, in liberal la-la land, and I can tell you that Democrats truly believe that Republican voters, conservatives, if only they were just a little bit more educated, just had a little bit more, that higher education, had a few letters after their last name, PhD, and plenty of degrees and so forth, that they would naturally be Democrat voters. Because Democrats, of course, are the party of the educated. and Republicans are the party of deplorables. And so this is indeed a theme that runs through the minds of Democrat voters, the ones at the top, right? The other ones are just sheep. Who do I vote for? Tell me. And, so long as I can wear my pink hair and go into the bathroom of my choice, I will follow you forever. So the ones at the top, the elite Democrats, right? The John Kerrys of the world, the Barack Obamas of the world, the Hillary Clintons of the world, the Bill Gates types, right? They truly believe that you, conservative voter, are just stupid. And if you were just a little bit smarter, wee bit smarter, that you would vote Democrat. It's maddening, it's patronizing, it's condescending, but this is truly how they think. And I'm sure California, right? The Democrats out in California think the same way. As a matter of fact, my guest today has some expertise in living in California because he is from California, which means he's actively suffering under the Democrat governor, Gavin Newsom. He's written the book, The Newsom Nightmare, The California Catastrophe, and How to Reform Our Broken System. I said at the outset, how to reform our broken system. Don't vote Democrat, don't vote Democrat, don't vote Democrat. But John Cox has some more solutions to tack onto that. John, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. It is so great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's talk about Gavin Newsom, because you have a problem with Gavin Newsom, it seems, and you spell it out in The Newsom Nightmare, the first part of the title of your new book. What do you mean by that? Why is he such a nightmare?
Well, it's not personal, but it's all about the way he gets elected and the management of policy once he gets elected. And people know California for the great weather and the great natural beauty. That's why I live there. I grew up in Chicago. But, the beauty and the weather can't make up for the fact that California is so badly run. We have shortages of energy, water, housing. We have a homeless situation that only has gotten worse, rising crime, an education system we spend $100 billion on, and the results are one of the worst in the nation. Something like 30% of our students are minimally capable in math or science or reading. We have some of the worst roads in the country, while we have the highest tax rate and the highest cost of living. Mr. Newsom thinks that merits a promotion to be president of the United States, and I'm here to sound a clarion call that that shouldn't happen, that the rest of the country shouldn't be as badly run as California. But I'm also sounding an alarm about our political system and the need for change that would get us better policy and get us abundance of energy, water, and housing and other things that people need day to day.
John, you say we when you're referencing the problems in California. Are you in California right now?
Actually, I'm not. I'm taking a short break in Florida, but I live in California. I love California. I don't know that I would want to live anywhere else. But I've achieved some success. I started out with a single mom and worked my way through school, but I've achieved a level of success, and because I have some means, I can afford California. But the trouble is that most people can't. 95% of the people in California are really struggling every single day to afford housing, afford electricity, afford gasoline, and all these things are being made more expensive and out of reach by a government that basically is controlled by special interest groups. And that's the essential problem that my reform gets to. We've got to get our political system away from these interest groups. Gavin Newsom is a maestro, an absolute maestro at vacuuming up all the money from these interest groups and then giving them what they want. And unfortunately, what they want is usually at variance with what is good for the rest of the people. And unfortunately, that's some of how Washington, D.C. works, too. And I'm proposing a change in how we elect the U.S. Congress. I think that would mean that we would get better policy and a better Congress, which I think we desperately need at this time in history.
So we've all been watching California just completely crumble under Democrat control for a while now. The homelessness, drug addicts, tents in the streets, and so forth. And I'm just curious, the people who live there, they must realize this is because of Democrat control. Are they that delusional that they still blame Republicans for the demise of California? Or is there something deeper going on? Is it the way the voting districts are set up? Maybe not gerrymandered completely, but to the point where if you are a conservative valued voter, your vote doesn't mean anything. What's going on?
It's both of those things. First of all, you've got a compliant media that really heralds everything that the left does and really is not interested in any policies that are, proposed by the right. But the other part of it is that there's interest groups who feed into that. I mean, they spend literally millions on television ads, and you're right about the electoral structure. California's legislative districts are so huge. 1 million people in a Senate district, 500,000 in an assembly district. These are as big or bigger than congressional districts, and because of that, the campaigns are all about massive TV, massive social media, massive mass media, and because of that, the people really have tuned out. You hit the nail on the head. People look at all the money going into politics in California, and they say, my vote doesn't count. It's the interest groups, it's the big funders, it's the PACs, it's the super PACs, all of these groups that weigh in. And it's the same, by the way, with the U.S. Congress. I'm proposing in this book, The Newsom Nightmare, a methodology, a change in our electoral structure that takes away the power of the media, takes away the power of these interest groups. Not only that, though, it gets individuals more involved in the process. Essentially, I'm proposing that we subdivide these huge congressional districts, 750,000 people, into 100 tiny little community districts of only 7,500 people each. In a district that small, you're not going to need media. You're not going to buy media. You're not going to use social media to get elected. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go out and meet and talk to your constituents. In that fashion, the individual voter feels more involved and feels like their vote matters. And gerrymandering doesn't make the difference either in a tiny district. And so you get more voter involvement, you get less of the media, less of the interest groups, and I think we would end up with better people who would be elected based on their competence and their character and their leadership abilities, which doesn't happen today. Today it's all about fundraising and mass media.
And the problem, of course, with your very creative solution is that in America right now, we've reached a point in the political class that it's not even about Democrats versus Republicans anymore. It's just about saving their own skins. And so you see Democrats and Republicans unite to fight any challenges to their power, right? So someone like you comes along with real solutions, and right away you're going to be met with obstacles and walls, not just from Democrats, but Republicans as well, don't you think?
Absolutely, and I'm also going to be met with the media. Frankly, the media is making a lot of money from this. I'm sorry to say that on a media channel, but the media can be very important in the political process, absolutely, for conveying information. But right now, they're the big thumb on the scale because they decide who goes on television or radio or in social media. They decide what issues get emphasized, and that's the problem here. The public just doesn't feel like they have a say in this whole thing. With this proposal where we have these little community districts and the 100 people who are elected in those community districts in each congressional district, they decide on one person to go to Washington, the other 99 stay home. In that environment, I think leadership and competence would rise to the top, and we'd get a better Congress, and we break this stranglehold of the media. You're absolutely right. Right now, there's a control group of people in the media and in big business and in interest groups that really kind of control the political structure. And, they're using it for their own devices, their own profit. And if you really believe in this country, which I do, we have to change the structure if we're going to make a difference. And the survival and the prosperity of the United States is not only essential to us in this country, but I think it's essential to the prosperity and freedom of the whole world. And it's our responsibility to make sure our structure is modified to get better policy.
And that's why it makes it so worrisome, to me at least, and I'd like your response into this, when Gavin Newsom goes to China and meets with the communist leader there, because as you pointed out a few minutes ago at the outset of our chat, that he is making whispers about a run for the White House in 2024. And so when you look at him fawning with communists, it becomes even more worrisome that California will become the state of America.
No question. And, listen, Mr. Newsom is on the left. He knows that the left has more energy generally. He also knows that China is governed on the left. Let's face it, it's a socialist communist state. It then exalts government. It puts in place a few leaders. China, a nation of 1.4 billion, is controlled by 500 members of their Politburo and led by Xi Jinping. And, they're building military bases in the South China Sea. They're getting into countries all around the world with their Belt and Road Initiative. They certainly have designs on having a big, big impact on the control of the world. And we in the United States, we believe in freedom. We believe in self-determination. We believe in individual liberty and the free market. And that's not what these guys believe. And this is a battle for not just our country, but it's a battle for the world, and that means we need our best and our brightest in our political offices, and we are not getting that. We are getting people that professional fundraisers who are good at divisive social issues like guns and abortion, and they use those to get people on their side, when what we really ought to be doing is we ought to be talking about the things that unite us, the things that will produce prosperity and abundance and quality of life. And Gavin Newsom is not that person. He's a guy who is born into power. His grandfather and his father were kingmakers in California. He grew up in that environment. He wants to be the king himself. He wants to have power. I get it. But we have to make sure that we keep the power in the people and have a form of government that emphasizes the individual liberties our country was founded on.
And speaking of policies that divide instead of unite, one recent headline about California, coming out of California, is that retail shops in California are either going to have to create an aisle in their stores that is dedicated to gender-neutral toys, whatever that means, because according to Democrats, right, there is no such thing as a girl versus a boy or whatever. But they're going to have to either dedicate an aisle to gender-neutral toys or face fines under Gavin Newsom. Can you speak to this madness? And I know you say that it's lobbyists and special interests that run government, but the LGBTQ crowd is still a very small minority. They can't be pulling in that much money.
No, and this is the playbook. The playbook is to get people to focus on some hot-button issue like this. This is ridiculous, gender-neutral toy sections and other things like that. At the same time, people in California can't afford a house. They can't afford gasoline. They pay electricity rates that are 5 times higher than the rest of the country. Their gasoline is twice as expensive. Their schools aren't teaching. The roads are absolutely horrendous. Education is a disaster. The highest taxes, the highest cost of living, and what do they focus on? They focus on gender-neutral toy stores. I mean, give me a break. But this is all about slicing up the electorate to get to little groups that are energized based upon some issue like that, when we ought to be focused on the big picture and providing a better quality of life to most people. And It's the old thing of bread and circuses. They're providing circuses when the people really need bread. They need a better living standard, and they're slicing up people based upon these, crazy things. Abortion is another one. Newsom is all about abortion. Well, California has abortion enshrined in its Constitution. It's not threatened, but every single word or every other word you hear out of Gavin Newsom's mouth is about abortion. He doesn't want to answer for all the other problems he fails to fix. And I'm hoping that people wake up to this finally and decide that they're done with all these problems, and they're going to get somebody that's going to correct them.
So let me finish, John, with this last question, because I'm always curious about the idea whether evil knows it's evil, right? Do evil people know they're evil, or do they genuinely believe that they're doing something that's good? And so when you look at Gavin Newsom and his utter decimation of California and his continuance of policies that decimate California, do you think that he knows that do you think he is purposely destroying California, or do you think that truly deep down in his heart he thinks he's doing Californians a good turn?
He's purposely seeking power. He's purposely doing this because he knows that he can distract people, he can make people believe that he's on their corner on abortion or guns or one of these things while he's destroying their quality of life otherwise. And he gets them to focus on that shiny object while ignoring all these myriad of other issues that he's failed to address. He did it in that recent appearance with DeSantis. He talked about how many patents California has, how many Silicon Valley companies, how many great... Well, listen, if you're a smart person with a great business idea, of course, you're going to probably want to live in a state with the best weather and the best natural beauty, which is California. That's like the rooster taking credit for the sunrise. But he's doing his best to drive those companies out. So Elon Musk is in Texas, Toyota, Nestle, a whole bunch of other companies have moved out of California. Chevron just wrote off all their assets in California. California could be an energy kingpin, but they won't let anybody drill. Meanwhile, then we funnel money like crazy to Iran and Russia and people who hate us. It's just insane, yet Newsom gets away with it by talking about the world ending due to climate change and all these other things. So, it's all about smoke and mirrors and the bread and circuses, and the proposal I'm making, which you can find at hearthepeople.org, that's hearthepeople.org, is a common sense, easy to implement solution that would get us away from the media-driven politics and the special interests, and truly return the People's Congress, the People's House, to the people where we'd actually have a say. And Newsom doesn't want that. He wants to continue the reign of the interest groups and media, and we've got to stop that at all costs.
Is that hear as in listen, H-E-A-R?
Yes.
Okay.
H-E-A-R, hearthepeople.org. It's a revolutionary change, but it's very simple. It's just subdividing the current congressional districts. That's pretty easy to do. And each state can do this. It's very easy. And it's a bipartisan solution. It doesn't favor either side. What it does favor, it favors the people. It favors the country. It favors the future of our living standards and our prosperity and our individual freedoms, which I really believe are under attack. We've got to stand up now, and if we don't do that, we're going to face the music and maybe lose these things at some point.
Well, it's good to have solutions, so I encourage listeners to go there, hear, H-E-A-R, thepeople.org. And also, I assume your book, a link to buying your book, is on that site, The Newsom Nightmare, The California Catastrophe, and How to Reform Our Broken System. It's available everywhere, right, that books are sold?
Yes, Amazon, Google, any place you want to get it.
Yep. Thank you. John Cox, I want to thank you so much for your time on Bold and Blunt. Thank you for writing this, and thank you for offering some solutions to look at instead of just, Monday morning quarterbacking complaints. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
And thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing to Bold and Blunt. If you are a subscriber, if you're not, I want to ask you, please go to WashingtonTimes.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and go to the newsletter section. Click on it and find Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. Sign up for my newsletter. You'll get Bold and Blunt delivered right to your email box, along with my commentaries that I write for the Washington Times. You may also get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, and wherever podcasts are offered. Tune in next time. And in the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.